Hey, welcome to the September 2025 Homestead Huddle, where we're going to talk about all things homesteading and farming, gardening, food foresting. Now, it doesn't matter if you are living on 0.22 acres in the middle of suburbia, or if you're on 222 acres out in the middle of the country with farm animals and livestock and all those good things. We are going to address questions this month, as always, from our Patreon fam. So they submit questions every month, and those are the ones that we tackle. The reason why I really like to do that is because this is what real farmers, homesteaders, gardeners, and food foresters are thinking about and doing this month. The Patreon community ranges not only in age, but also in demographics. Some of them are living in Northern California, some in Michigan and Wisconsin, and many down here in Central Florida. So regardless of where you're from, hopefully you'll be able to learn a few things, glean a couple things, whether you're watching or listening, and add a few tools to your tool belt. So before we get started with those questions, I want to tackle the 3 things that you should be doing in the garden this month. Now, we divide these up into USDA growing zones, 3 through 8 first, and then 9 through 11. So we'll do our cold temperate climate first, and then our more tropical and warm climates there second. So then we'll jump into all of those questions and all of the really nerdy answers along the way. So get ready. So let's go ahead and start with the top 3 things that you should be doing in USDA growing zones 3 through 8. So this is our Midwest, our North, those colder climates that are, I hate to say it, you're getting ready for the changing of the seasons. I was just talking with my parents the other day, and they are in Michigan. They're doing this awesome 2-month road trip. So they're going to be really enjoying the fall changing of colors. And they said the other day, the colors are already starting in Michigan with the maples. So the maples are already starting to change. For those of you that are in Wisconsin and Canada, you're probably experiencing much of the same thing. So what should you be doing in those colder climate or temperate climate growing zones? The first thing that I'd be thinking about this month in September is this is your last chance to plant those cold crops. So we're thinking beets and radishes, turnips, Swiss chard. So if you're wanting to be growing through the fall and the early winter months, if you've got a hoop house or a polytunnel, this is your last chance to get those in the ground. You're a little bit late, but sometimes if we have those little bit more warmer falls, coming into winter, the Indian summers, then they're going to do really, really well. The second thing that I'd be thinking about if I were still living in Michigan or Kansas City, I'd be thinking about getting my mulch ready, whether that's going to be wood chips or straw or grass clippings or leaves. I'm starting to collect all of those really good mulch stuff because I want to be using that in October and November, getting ready to cover the soil, protect the root systems and the root balls, especially of first-year trees and shrubs and bushes. I want to get that mulch ready and ordered. So you could even get on chipdrop.com. Always pre-add the tip. You'll have a way better chance of getting the wood chips, and see about getting that mulch ready to start applying, nice and slow. I don't like to rush when it gets to be like October, November. I don't want to rush and have to get all of that done in a 1 or 2 week period. Start now. Just start getting those wood chips ready. So the third thing to think about in USDA zones 3 through 8 is harvesting the surplus crops and storing them and drying them. So if you're a canner and you're doing your tomatoes and you're doing jams and jellies and preserves, maybe you're drying some of the herbs that are in the garden. Cut them now, make the little herb bundles, hang them up in your kitchen. Get those things drying so that way you can have fresh herbs for your pastas and casseroles and shepherd's pie, over the winter months. There's nothing like being able to take those fresh herbs and just crush them over top of a nice home-cooked meal in the winter months. It's one of those things that this time of year we get busy with back to school. Work is starting to pick up again after summer vacations. We're done with Labor Day weekend, and it's hard to think about going and cutting them. But if you just take 30 minutes and go this week, cut 5 bundles, and they don't have to be big, and just tie them up with some little twine or jute or whatever, hang them up in the kitchen, and you will be so glad come the winter months. Plus, it does look kind of cool in the kitchen when you got those like rad dried herbs. It just puts you in your like wizard era of life. You know what I mean? So those are the three things I'd be thinking about in USDA zones 3 through 8. Last chance for fall crops, getting that mulch ordered and then harvesting, storing, and drying the surplus crops. So if you are in USDA zones 9 through 11, our tasks are a little bit different. So this time of year in September in the warmer climate zones, there's a transition happening where it's peak food forest season and the food forest is really producing. We're getting avocados, we're getting some mangoes. The tropical cherries are producing. I had a lot of Barbados cherries this week. Some of the tropical mulberries are getting ready for another round, jabuticaba. So many good things are happening in the food forest, but here's the transition. Annual vegetable season is now here. So you've hopefully have, got those raised beds ready. If you haven't, you better get on it. But this is our transition month. So we're going from primarily food forest over the summer into annual vegetable gardening through the winter months. That was a huge change for me. When I moved from Kansas City to Florida, my first year, I planted a spring garden in Florida. Terrible idea. Terrible idea. Pretty much the only thing that grows in the summer months in Florida is like okra. You know what I mean? Like just very, very few things. So nobody told me when I moved here that the major difference is instead of starting our annual vegetables in the spring, we start in September and we go all the way through May. And by May, we're done. Food forest season starts. So it's a pretty big transition month for a lot of people in these warmer climate zones. So if you're in USDA zones 9 through 11, here's the three things I'd be thinking about this month, besides taking a sip of my coffee. So good. So the first thing is September is fall soil amending. So in most of USDA zones 9 through 11, we amend our soils end of February, June, and September. So September, this is our fall fertilization, our soil amending window. Now, if it's fruit trees and berry bushes, at the very least, just get a good whole ingredient, like a poultry-based fertilizer. I really like Espoma. Tree tone or plant tone are really good. They're just nice whole ingredient. If you're wanting to kind of mix your own or go like ingredient by ingredient, I would be doing azomite this month because it's high minerals and silica. I'd be doing kelp because kelp and seaweed help the uptake of minerals. Technically, kelp doesn't do much fertilizing on its own, but it helps bring up the minerals into the plant. I'd be doing rock dust, again, minerals, and Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate. So those are all gonna help prepare those fruit trees to begin going dormant and help send out new roots going into winter, which means if you fertilize and amend your soil in September, it's not like you're increasing your fruit production right now. The purpose of that fall fertilizing is to get the root system spreading and ready so you have a much stronger springtime. So especially on those peaches, pear, plum, nectarines, loquats, fertilizing and amending now, especially with things like azomite and Epsom salts and rock dust, that's really going to increase your chances of a solid spring harvest. So the second thing I'd be thinking of right now, this is your last chance, USDA zones 9 through 11, last chance to plant cold sensitive trees. So September is the last smart time to be doing avocados, mango, strawberry tree, Barbados cherry, a lot of those super tropical things need to go in the ground now. Can you do it in October, November? You can. It ain't smart. You're going to be really risking them not being rooted in enough. You're going to have to be protecting them, tenting them, lighting campfires. So this is your last month. So if you don't have a plan for it, get a plan for those avocado trees. Get a plan for those mango trees. I'd love to help you with that, especially if you're here in Florida. And I also do virtual consultations. I do them all over the world. So if you're in Norway or Korea or Michigan, whatever, we can figure out you ain't going to be doing avocados in Michigan. We can really get a plan for those things now. So the third thing that I'd be thinking of, especially September right now, is fall vegetable season, like I mentioned. So last chance to get your beds reset. If you do nothing else, apply 1 to 2 inches of compost. If you do nothing else, if you don't turn the beds, if you don't mix the soil, if you're not amending and adding in blood meal into your annual vegetables, at least add 1 to 2 inches of compost on top. That's at the very, very, very least. If you want a really good deep dive into it, we just did a class this last week on how to reset a raised bed in Patreon. So it's a good 35 minute, deep dive into how to reset a raised bed, where I take you through the full process, very beginning until end. So along that same lines, this is the time to start seeds in trays. So you're doing tomatoes, you're doing eggplants, you're doing peppers. All those nightshades, if you didn't start them the last week of August, you can start those in trays now. So start seeds and reset those raised beds. So again, USDA zones 9 through 11, fall soil amending, last chance to plant those cold sensitive trees like avocados and mangoes. And number 3, as this is fall vegetable season, it has finally arrived. So those are the 3 things to be doing in each of the sections of growing zones. So now we're going to jump into the questions for the month. So if this is your first time with us on a Homestead Huddle, these questions come from our Patreon community. So they post questions every single month. I don't curate these questions. These are just the real-time things that homesteaders, farmers, gardeners are thinking about right now. So I literally just copy and paste these questions, kind of pre-think a little bit of my answers, and I just write them on 2 pieces of paper and I stick them in front of me, and then I just ramble. So if there's bunny trails, we've met. I do a lot of bunny trails. So let's go ahead and jump into these questions, and you are welcome to fast forward, through them, find the ones that are relevant to you, or if you're just listening, in your earbuds, or this is playing in the background as you're going about housework or whatever. Awesome. So the questions will be listed in the description below this video. So question number 1 is, what is the best way to propagate the American beautyberry, and what are some tips on usage? So American beautyberry, really is native to the United States from about USDA zones 4 or 5 all the way up to 10. So it's got a really broad range where it appears in nature. So this is the ones that has the bright hot pink magenta clusters of berries kind of going up the stem. You can look at the picture here. Now this is a really beautiful and useful plant with a few caveats. So I would say, as far as ways to propagate it, by far the easiest way to propagate it is go dig some up at someone's property who has a little bit of land. They're probably more than happy to share them with you. I know, even on the farmland here in Florida, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Per every couple acres, there's so many of them. Digging up the little seedlings, usually in the springtime, is going to be the easiest. Now, you can dig them up really any time of year, and they transplant pretty well. Now, the key is to really go deep. I like to dig all the way around it first, and then get my shovel underneath and then give it that pop. So you're cutting the root mass all the way around first to kind of slice it in a circle. Then that final, pop is where it's going to come out. But it does have a little bit of a taproot, so you want to get as much of that as possible and leave that soil ball intact if you can. Don't pull just the roots out. So if you're able to leave the soil on there, you're going to disturb less of the roots. Now, if you pull it out and you only have roots, it's not going to hurt anything. You can sprinkle some rooting hormone on there if you want. You can rub on some aloe vera. Does help, not from the bottle because that's dyed and chemicals and whatever, but just straight from the aloe plant. You can literally take an aloe, cut it open, and just rub that succulent leaf on the root. Now, you also can propagate it by air layering. It does air layer very, very, very easily. There is a class on that in Patreon for those that are in that community. You can do a full deep dive. I think the class I was doing an avocado on that one, a Marcus pumpkin avocado to be exact. Avocado that gets this big and is good. It's not like that nasty Florida avocado. So the American beautyberry, I've heard of people doing it by cuttings. I've never had great luck doing it from cuttings, and honestly, it's just so easy to propagate by just digging up a couple from someone who has some land. It just seems to be easier to do it that way. How do you use the American beautyberry though? Now, the berries, technically you can eat them fresh. Personally, I think they taste and have the texture of styrofoam. There's just not a lot of like juicy styrofoam. There's not a lot of flavor to them. When I see them, I want them to be good. Like I want this berry to be good because they're so bright and vibrant, that hot magenta pink, you know, with the purple hue to it. It's like, man, this looks awesome. And then I eat them and every time I'm like, great. So technically, yes, they're edible. You can make a jelly or a jam or a preserve out of it, but what I've found is it basically just takes on the flavor of whatever sugar you use. So the novelty of it is the jelly or jam is bright pink, so it's magenta, and that's cool, but it's just not real good. You know what I mean? As far as my favorite usage for them, honest to God, I like the leaves. So the leaves you can crush and like rub on your skin. I like to take the leaves and boil them in water for a few minutes and then let it cool off, put it in a spray bottle, and it's insect repellent. And it's very, very safe to use on humans, animals, livestock, sprayed on the chicken coop. Left on the countertop, it's only going to be good for 2 to 3 days, but you can refrigerate it and it's good for 1 to 2 weeks. And it does feel really good, especially in Florida, to just spritz on that nice, cool, insect repellent. So to me, that's my favorite use of the American Beauty Berry. It is a decent food source for, like butterflies and nectar in the springtime. And then in the winter, the berries technically are a good source for birds. I don't really notice wild songbirds going to them as much. They seem to go toward more like wild cherries or, other things. They just don't seem to love them as much. My chickens will eat them, but my birds are bougie. So what's weird is if I take the branch and I throw it in the chicken coop, they don't touch it. Like they go up, they look, and they're like, meh, I'm too good for this. However, if I take them and I crumble them and drop them on the ground in the coop, then they eat them. Why? Bougie birds. I have no idea, to be honest. So those are the tips on using the American Beauty Berry. Honestly, it's a great wildflower, wild shrub to have in the yard, but I think honestly the best use for it is going to be in the leaves. So question number 2 is, what is your favorite attachment for your weed whacker? I have a steel that has the interchangeable end on it. Do you like the string or the metal blades for work in the food forest? I think for me, it depends. Now, I love steel as a brand. It's well worth the money to me. And to be able to do the interchangeable end with weed whacker, pole saw, they have a leaf blower attachment, the metal blades for cutting. It's just very, very versatile. And to me, it just saves room in the potting shed or in the barn. So I don't have 10 tools. I can have the one and interchange the head. So I think that's super helpful. Now, in the food forest, I use the weed whacker end with the string the most. One, because it's forgiving. So if you accidentally hit something that you want, it doesn't totally rip it to shreds and destroy it. Now, if I'm brush clearing, heck yes, I use really good protective wear, protective boots, and I'll use the blade ends for brush clearing. But primarily, I use the string. Now, I don't waste money ever on the cheap string. When you buy your weed whacker string, only get, yes, I know it's a little bit more money, but it will save you so much time and energy. Get the commercial grade that's like slightly twisted, like mine is neon green, I think, from a big box store. It's amazing. It lasts so much longer than just the cheap stuff. And to me, that's my favorite because I can use that for weeding, and then just put some contractor paper and wood chips over top. That's kind of one of my number one go-tos for resetting areas of the food forest. Is if I've got weeds coming up, I'll go through and I'll weed whack with the string, and then I'll just take 2 layers of contractor paper, which is like the brown roll-out paper from Home Depot or Lowe's, and I'll roll that out, and then I'll do a new fresh layer of wood chips 4 to 6 inches deep on top. And that's my reset model most of the time. So that's my favorite attachment. I don't use the metal one as much because it tears your edging to shreds. And I have a lot of either metal edging or brick edging, and it just doesn't work real well for that. The other reason I like the string is because I like to scalp the soil. So if this is my brick, I like to scalp between the brick and the grass about 4 inches. And you'll see on a lot of mine, I'll even burn it first right up to the brick. So that way it creates that buffer zone and it prevents the weeds and torpedo grass and Bermuda grass from going into the food forest. And it just looks nicer. It's a cleaner edge, I feel like, around the food forest, especially if it's in your side yard or immediate backyard space. It really cleans up the edges of the food forest and it just looks less sloppy. So question number 3, tips on keeping an alligator away. This person is in Florida. Don't live by water. The big test in Florida, when you see water, how do you tell if there's an alligator in it? Well, you walk up to the water, you stick your finger in. If it feels wet, there's probably an alligator. Like that's the rule of thumb, or the finger rule, for Florida and alligators. There's not really a way to keep them out. Now you can deter them by keeping food sources put away that they're going to be eating and keeping the area cleared. I like having a naturalized space close to the water because it's better for wildlife habitat. It's better for fish, for minnows, for a lot of those small wildlife and shrimp and birds. It's just, to me, it's better, but it does attract more alligators. Now, if the alligator is larger and you can't get rid of it, option 1 is you can metal fence it and do a 3-4 foot tall metal fence in the water. It looks stupid. And I don't like those because it's not as good for wildlife. Wildlife needs to be able to kind of have that ebb and flow. The only way to deal with that kind of an alligator is either 1, get a permit to where you are able to either take care of it yourself, euthanize it, or you can call the Florida Wildlife Commission and they will come in and they can capture and relocate. So those are really the only real options. There's not really a spray that works. There's not an alligator decoy that scares them away or whatever. So honestly, the best way is just either call Florida Wildlife Commission, have them relocate it, or you got to do the fencing. Question number 4, can I plant wildflowers in September? Doesn't matter what growing zone you're in. If you are in the colder climate zones, the answer is yes. You can do the potted plant wildflowers or by seed. But remember, in USDA zones 3 through 8, you are now in dry season. So the rains have really started tapering off already. So you may have to water to get established. So September is still a great window to be able to do that. There is a company, if you're wanting seeds for the Midwest, great wildflower mixes, called Prairie Moon Nursery, prairiemoonnursery.com. And they have some free downloadable documents on how to plant a wildflower field from seed that's good in any growing zone. But their seeds there in particular are specific to USDA zones 3 through 8. So really great resource. Their seed mixes I've used for many, many years. If you're in the South, I really like American Meadows. I love Hancock Seed Company. They've got some great wildflower mixes as well. And in the Southern US, it is still rainy season up until the end of October. So it's still a great window to do wildflower in the warmer climates, either by seed or in pots. Now, granted, they're not going to look as pretty right now because many of the wildflowers are starting to wind down a little bit. So when you buy them at the nursery, they may not look impressive or be in bloom. But I would encourage you highly to go to a nursery that specializes in native wildflowers and don't buy them from box stores. Here's why. So I'll use Coreopsis as an example. And this is, grows all over the United States. So Coreopsis, when you buy it a lot of times from a box store, it'll be like yellow with a burgundy center, really, really pretty, but often it's a hybrid that is sterile and it doesn't spread by seed. So when you buy them, you want to not only buy, the native, but you want to make sure it's a legitimate native that is going to spread by seed. So in Florida, I love like lanceleaf Coreopsis, tick seed Coreopsis, because you buy the one plant and then just let the seed heads dry and fall, and then you can start spreading it around. So yeah, it's going to look neat and formal for a little while, but over time it will spread into a more wildflower field. A lot of the coneflowers are the same way. Echinacea purpurea is the purple coneflower, which is really pretty in the native form with the bright pink and the orangish kind of center, but there's so many hybrids of it. Many of them are sterile by seed, and so they don't spread by seed. They just stay put. And so by and large, I try to go to a really good local wildflower place that has natives. And my personal couple favorites, if you're near Oviedo, Florida, I really like South Seminole Nursery. They have some really good natives. My all-time favorite in Groveland is Green Isle Gardens. They have an amazing selection of Florida native wildflowers, but there's many resources in your area. When I was in Kansas City, Crit Site, and I believe they do ship, CRIT Site, has some really good stuff. And again, Prairie Moon Nursery for wildflowers as well. Question number 5. What are some good pine tree and acidic soil planting suggestions? This person is in zone 10B. So planting in more acidic soil can be a little bit challenging. Now, for those in Patreon, there's a new PDF that'll be for USDA zones 3 through 8, and then one for 9 through 11 that will give you some region-specific plants that are really good for that acidic soil, which is often found under pine trees or on the edges of oak trees. So some of the ones for this person in zone 10B, I would look at jabuticaba, the Brazilian grape. It's like the sweetest grape you've ever had in your life, wrapped in a Cabernet Sauvignon. Like, it's got that more high tannin skin with a really sweet, juicy center. The red does produce faster, about 3 years from a 3-gallon pot size. The black jabuticabas, the Grimmels, and the Sabras, they can take 5 years to produce. So just get one of each. The black tastes better, but you do have to wait for them a little bit longer. So I do jabuticabas, grapes. Find the native grapes to your area. If you're in Florida, think of like Southern Home and Muscadine grapes. Those are going to be some really good ones. Olive trees do really well. I would grow olive trees even if they didn't produce olives, because the leaves are medicinal as a tea. Really good for hair, skin, nails, heart health, immune system booster, and honestly, olive trees are stunning. I mean, these are trees that will last for 5,000 years. Literally, there are thousands of year old olive trees in Jerusalem, in Gethsemane, that will like blow your mind. So olive trees, and probably I would do pineapples. Pineapples love that acidic kind of soil structure. So if you want a little bit deeper dive, coming this week in Patreon, there will be a PDF for zones 3 through 8 and another for 9 through 11. So question number 6, how to plant fruit trees that are in a tropical coastal area that has a 5 to 6 foot elevation. Now, this person is asking specifically because they've never flooded until Milton. And then in Milton, the waves come up and the tides rise and you get that flooding, which does have salt and salt spray. So if you're in a coastal area, whether this is California, it's Texas or Florida, or even Louisiana, it's important to think about what are some semi-natives or naturalized plants that are going to be tolerant in the case of a 100-year flood. So always plan on a 100-year flood that it's going to happen, because, climate change is real. Whether you call it global warming, the natural cycles of the earth, and it's going to get cold again later, whatever you believe, we know that our climate is different than it was in the 70s and 80s. It just is. It's just different. So plan on more extremes, whether that's extreme heat or extreme cold, extreme wind, extreme storms. Those things are they're happening in this day and age. So it's important to plan for that 100-year flood. So 2 things that I would consider. First is make sure that when you're selecting your trees, shrubs, and bushes, that you choose ones that have a pretty good salt tolerance. So think of sea grapes, loquats, figs, guavas, jujubes. All of those have a pretty good salt tolerance, not only from the salty air and the wind, but also it'll have a better chance if you do get a flood and straight up salt water comes out. They're just quite a bit more actually salt tolerant. So sea grapes, loquats, figs, jujubes, guava, those sort of things are going to be the most salt tolerant. And even with the flowers, think of like beach or dune sunflower or sand cordgrass. Those things have a really good salt tolerance, whereas some of those inland plants just are not tolerant of the salt at all. The second thing that I would do is plan in mounded areas. So instead of just planting straight in the ground, think about mounding up a few feet. If you're doing an agroforestry row, do like 4 feet wide and mound up about 2 feet. and plant kind of in mounds, because even when the salt water comes in, that's going to dry out a lot faster than planting directly in the ground. And you'll have a much better chance of flushing that soil and bringing things back into normal. I wouldn't worry about like planting all your trees in pots or in raised beds. No, please don't do that. Planting fruit trees and berry bushes in pots, the only reason you should be doing that is you're in a temporary scenario where you're in an apartment or a condo and you're going to be moving. Like fruit trees and berry bushes, they just need to be in the ground. I know that's controversial, but it's true. You get way better fruit, more fruit. The trees are healthier. The tap roots don't get ruined. That's a whole other scenario. The other thing I would say, even 3 things that I would consider for this coastal area is to create microclimates. Think bamboos. Those clumping bamboos, don't get a runner. My God, don't get a runner. Get a good clumping bamboo from somebody that's very, very trustworthy. My go-to bamboo source is Shanti Pierce from This Bamboo Life or Bamboo Leaf Tea. You can find her on all social media. And she is phenomenal. I mean, she is one of, in my opinion, the top experts on the globe for bamboos. Medicinally planting, knowing the varieties that are the right plant for the right place, creating that bamboo hedge around your property will help with the hurricane winds, but also protect from the salt spray. So that can make a huge, huge difference. Sea grapes can also be used for that as well. Question number 7. What are some tips on managing ants? Here's the thing. Let's just focus on the positive first. Ants are amazing composters. I mean, they are composting machines. They're taking all of that waste material, they're bringing it down into their ant colony, and they're putting that compost down where it belongs as subsoil. So they are really, really good in the right spot. Now, when they're in the wrong spot, especially if you're in California, Texas, Florida, and you've got fire ants, my gosh, they are rough. They are rough. And they're mean. Those little ones too, they're the jerks. The little ones are like the kamikaze ones. So if you're not from Florida, what's weird is if you walk through an ant pile, you might not know it for a couple of minutes. And all of a sudden, they start biting you all over your legs, they're up like on your side. You're like, how the heck? It's like this kamikaze group jihad strike, like they're all just like coming at me at once. Like it is just crazy. It is just crazy. So anyway, how do you get rid of them? A couple ways that you can get rid of them. One is cinnamon, cheap Ceylon cinnamon. Don't spend money at Publix on cinnamon. Go to the dollar store or get it in bulk. Sprinkle the cinnamon on the ant pile, be liberal with it. And that does help a lot, actually. Diatomaceous earth, to me, everybody says works. I've never had DE work. To me, diatomaceous earth is extremely overrated. The first time that it rains or you have a heavy dew, it's junk because it only works, on those bugs and insects when it is totally dry. I just don't think it works on that. And I never use it on livestock because it's horrendous for their lungs. If you want to know more about that, ask in the comments below because I'm not going to get into that. So I avoid DE. So cheap cinnamon works. The other thing that I think works really well is ants are very, very territorial and they will go to war on another colony. So what you can do is find a colony on one side of your yard, go the farthest away that you can find another colony, and you got to go quick. Get a 5-gallon bucket and get a big scoop of one ant colony, grab that bucket, run it over to the other ant colony and dump it on top and they'll kill each other. It's remarkable. They're extremely territorial. You can't just do one pile to the next pile because those colonies are often not standalone. So some people have tried it. They're like, oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You probably grabbed a colony that was using that other pile as basically a nursery to incubate baby ants. So they'll actually have like the main colony and then they'll have 4, 5, 6 other ones that are like the nurseries to be hatching the eggs basically as little ant incubators. So you've got to make sure that you get a totally different colony or a different species. So if you find a pile of the big red ants or the little teeny ones, if you just take that pile and do one on the other and then vice versa, that'll almost always take care of the ants. It's like starting an ant war. It's kind of fun. So question number 8, and again, I would still say ants are good. in the right spot. They're just really good composting machines. So question number 8, what are your thoughts on using swamp water, specifically like fetid slurries? So this person used Biden's Alba. I've seen people do, let's see, what are the other ones? Mexican sunflower or Jerusalem artichokes if you're in a colder climate, or comfrey. You leave it in a bucket of water, you cover it, and you let it sit for a few months. So that practice is great. I mean, it's one of the most common practices in Korean natural farming is to just let it sit, cover it, ferment it. I like to add in a lot of like brown sugar because that actually feeds the microbes with those sugars. So it's a really good way to get a highly concentrated fetid slurry. So Korean natural farming uses it all the time. Personally, and I can get into the soil biology thing in another video, that basically creates a more anaerobic favoring microbial environment. The problem with that is most fruit trees, berry bushes, nut trees, annual vegetables, they prefer aerobic. They prefer aerobic microbes that like highly oxygenated environments. So what I like to do when I create that fetid slurry or a Korean natural farming slurry is I'll filter it out first. I'll run it through cheesecloth or through a strainer in a big bucket. Then I'll put in an aerator, like a little soap stone, a little aerating stone. You can get them for like fish tanks that are like the bubblers. You can buy them for compost. And then I'll add in some molasses because that's my sugar to help feed it. And I'll let it aerate overnight. And what that does is it feeds the aerobic microbes, really makes that oxygen rich. And so even if you let it sit a little bit too long, adding those good probiotics can help swing it back into balance. The other thing that you can do is you can add in essential microbes or EM1. You could add, I use ProBio. It's by SCD Probiotics. There's usually always a link for that on my website. So you can go to products and then click BioAg or the SCD probiotic link. So I like BioAg for like fruit trees, berry bushes. If I'm doing it as a general compost or foliar spray, I use ProBio. And if it's just for livestock, I'm not using the slurry for that, then I use the Bio Livestock. But that's my company of choice to kind of swing that back into balance. But yeah, I would say absolutely pond water is fantastic. The thing that you'd want to watch for is that if you have a pond that has like a red algae bloom, or like I'm on the St. Johns River, which is brackish water, so high salt. So I'm not using St. Johns River water to be watering my plants because it's going to kill most plants. So if in doubt, just give it a good aeration and add some sugars to help feed the right microbes. So question number 9, and this is the last question. I'm finding in my food forest that I have a lot of new bugs. Some I can identify and some I can't. How do I get rid of the bug problem? Really good question. And honestly, it's a really common question. I would say don't. When you bring in fruit trees, berry bushes, nut trees, pollinators, native perennial plants, you're resetting a food system and an ecosystem in a really new way. Now, the goal of permaculture is to help your property produce what it would naturally in 100 years. In 100 years, nature is going to take it through a succession of species cycle where nut trees, fruit trees, berry bushes, they're going to appear there naturally because birds are going to come in and they're going to have eaten a fruit somewhere else, and in their droppings, they're going to plant a seed. Or a raccoon will come in and they'll have, some seeds or a fruit that they're eating and they'll bring it in from somewhere else. Or a deer has eaten apples and it walks onto your property and in its droppings, it plants an apple tree. So nature is going to create an abundant system in 100 years. Permaculture plans with that in mind. And so we take a clean slate or an existing canvas and we plant the succession of species so you can get the abundance in 3 to 5 years the nature would create in 100 years. When we do that, it's like swinging a pendulum, and you swing it into that direction of abundance, and nature knows it. You're going to get songbirds on your property that you haven't ever seen before. You're going to have deer, wildlife, and hogs, and squirrels, and rabbits. You're going to have bugs and butterflies and insects, native pollinators and native moths that fly in the night and pollinate things. It's going to become a brand new ecosystem. And it takes time when you've swung it into that level of abundance for it to swing back into balance. So yes, you are going to have new bug problems, but if you let it be, nature will bring in the songbirds. Or if you go, you know what, I got a bug problem, I'm going to hang some feeders for birds on the edges of the food forest. There's the hour-long class on wild bird feeding for a food forest is in Patreon as well. But it's an amazing way to help your ecosystem come into balance. So if you have, for example, a lot of slugs, and snails on your property, you don't have a slug problem. You have a shortage of ducks, because that's what's going to take care of it. If you've got a lot of caterpillars eating everything, you don't have a caterpillar problem. You have a shortage of native songbirds. So bring in songbirds that love caterpillars. So you could start hanging up suet feeders or suet cakes around the edges of your food forest system to bring in those songbirds to take care of that problem for you. Now, if you do have a plant and it is decimating the plant, just eating everything, tomato hornworms or whatever, yes, you can use a safe foliar spray to take care of that. My go-to is neem oil, and I'll add in some basic H just as an emulsifier, just to help as a plant-based surfactant. So I'll do neem and the basic H, or you can use this unscented Dr. Bronner's. I don't like it as well, but I like the basic H. But anyway, and I'll spray that at night. The reason why at night is if you spray it in the morning, pollinators are already active. I don't want to be killing the moths and the butterflies and the native bees and the native flies and insects. I want to spray it right in the evening as the sun is going down. Go ahead and do your foliar spray then, and that will take care of it. So if you've got things like white fly, you're getting black sooty mold, or you've got inchworms that are eating everything, the evening is the only time that I would do a neem-based spray or a horticultural oil. But again, I just try to let nature run its course. And so look at whatever the bug it is that you're having a problem with. First of all, see if it's a good guy in disguise. So for example, passion vine, the native host plant for the Gulf fritillary butterfly. So a lot of times people see those orange, caterpillars eating your passion vine. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. What's the native host plant? That's like planting a milkweed for a monarch caterpillar and then getting mad at the monarch caterpillar for eating the host plant. You want that. That's the goal, is to bring in those pollinators, the butterflies, into your system, because they are part of the ecosystem with you. So, I would say identify the bug first, good guy, bad guy, and see what you can do to help nature swing it back into course. I think a lot of times we view, and I'll start wrapping up, we view ourselves as a property owner of, it's my land, it's my property, it's my garden, it's my food forest, my avocado. Well, you and I are only on this planet for 70 or 80 years. That's like a blink of an eye. That's such a short window. Many of these fruit trees are going to last decades or hundreds of years longer than you or I are even going to be on the planet. So we're not really owners. It's not ours. We're land stewards. We get to steward this little postage stamp plot of land for a few minutes. So let's work together with nature to set this ecosystem up for a way that it can thrive and be abundant for 100 years. So instead of viewing it as your fruit tree, it's one fruit tree in the midst of a very, very large ecosystem that we are helping steward to create abundance, not only for us, but for the soil, for the microbial life that's in the soil, for the other plant life, for the native flora, the native fauna, the bugs, the bees, the butterflies, the bats, the insects, the dragonflies. We're here to work in harmony and in synergy with nature, not try and fight against it. So hopefully these 7-8 questions were helpful to you this month. And again, these are questions that come straight from our Patreon fam of homesteaders and gardeners from all over the US, many from all over the world, that are just wanting to see abundance on their plot of land. And how do we do it a little bit better? So if you are not part of our Patreon community, you can join for free forever if you want, or if you want the full access abundance tier trial, it is a free 7-day trial, and you can binge watch every video. There's over 35 classes on there now, 35 different PDF documents, and a lot of exclusive content there to really help farmers and homesteaders be abundant where they are. So we'd love to have you join us on Patreon /permaculturefx. So again, hopefully this was helpful to you where you are and that you are enjoying a beautiful and wonderful beginning of fall. As always, many blessings to you and your family, and a special thank you to the Patreon community. I'm going to list a few of the patrons here at the bottom that have been with us for a little while. Thank you so much for your monthly support. This is what makes this possible for us to keep putting out these videos and helping mentor homesteaders all over the world. Thanks so much. And again, I will see you in the garden.